A tiny kitten, alone and afraid. Night after night, its cries echoed through the shelter. Everyone thought it was just another abandoned pet, until they discovered the heartbreaking truth that changed everything. The fluorescent lights flickered in the cold, sterile hallway of Oakwood Animal Shelter. Rows of cages lined the walls, each holding a furry face with a story untold. But in the far corner, barely visible, huddled a tiny ball of orange fur. This was no ordinary kitten. As darkness fell each night, a haunting sound filled the air, a cry so mournful, so desperate. It sent chills down the spines of even the most seasoned shelter workers. "It's that kitten again," whispered Maria, the night attendant, her face etched with concern. "I've never heard anything like it." The kitten's eyes, once bright emerald, now seemed dulled by an unspeakable sorrow. Its tiny frame trembled with each cry, as if the weight of the world rested upon its fragile shoulders. Workers would pause, hearts heavy, as they passed its cage. Some tried to offer comfort, a gentle word, a soft touch. But the kitten remained unreachable, lost in its own world of grief. Days turned to weeks, and still the kitten's nightly ritual continued. Food was left untouched, the kibble scattered across the cage floor like discarded hopes. Toys lay ignored, their cheerful colors a stark contrast to the somber atmosphere that surrounded the little feline. The only constant was that heart-wrenching cry that seemed to hold a universe of sorrow. Maria began to spend her breaks sitting near the kitten's cage, speaking softly, trying to penetrate the veil of sadness that enveloped the tiny creature. "What happened to you, little one?" she would ask, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who are you waiting for?" As word spread about the mysterious crying kitten, visitors to the shelter increased. Some came out of curiosity, others drawn by a desire to help. Potential adopters came and went, drawn by the kitten's striking orange coat and those haunting emerald eyes. But the moment they approached, it would retreat to the farthest corner of its cage, trembling. Its cries would intensify, as if begging for something or someone they couldn't provide. "It's like it's waiting for someone," mused Dr. Thompson, the shelter veterinarian, his brow furrowed in thought. But who? He had seen countless animals come through these doors, each with their own story of loss or abandonment. But this kitten, there was something different, something that tugged at his heart in a way he couldn't explain. Rumors began to spread through the small town of Oakwood. The kitten became a local legend, a mystery that everyone had a theory about. Some said it was traumatized, beyond help, a lost cause. Others whispered of a curse, a superstition that kept even the kindest souls at bay. But a few, those with hearts open to hope, wondered if there was more to the story than met the eye. Children would press their faces against the shelter windows, wide-eyed and wondering. "Maybe it's a magic kitten," one little girl suggested, her imagination sparked by the tale. "Maybe it's waiting for its fairy godmother." The shelter staff tried everything they could think of to comfort the kitten. They played soothing music, tried different types of food, even brought in a behaviorist to assess the situation. But nothing seemed to make a difference. The kitten's cries continued, night after night, a haunting lullaby that echoed through the streets of Oakwood. As weeks turned to months, the story of the crying kitten began to change the town. People who had never given much thought to animal welfare now found themselves volunteering at the shelter. Donations increased and other animals found homes more quickly. It was as if the kitten's sorrow had awakened a collective conscience, reminding everyone of the depth of animal emotions. One particularly difficult night, as a storm raged outside, Maria sat by the kitten's cage, tears streaming down her face. "I wish I could understand," she whispered. "I wish I could help you." As if in response, the kitten's cries seemed to take on a different tone, not just sorrow, but a plea, a call to someone far away. It was then that Maria had an idea. With trembling hands, she took out her phone and began to record the kitten's cries. Maybe, she thought, if we can share this sound, the right person will hear it. Maybe they're out there, searching too. The video spread like wildfire across social media. People from all over the country watched, moved by the heart-wrenching sound and the sight of the tiny orange kitten, its eyes filled with an emotion too deep for words. Comments poured in, theories abounded, and the story reached far beyond the borders of Oakwood. As the video gained traction, something extraordinary began to happen. People started sharing their own stories of lost pets, of miraculous reunions, of the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. The crying kitten had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that love could transcend time and distance. Experts weighed in, offering their opinions on what could cause such behavior in a young cat. Some suggested trauma, others a rare medical condition. But for those who watched the video, who heard those cries night after night, there was a sense that this went beyond scientific explanation. This was about connection, about a love so strong it defied logic. Back at the shelter, the staff watched in amazement as their little charge became an internet sensation. But for the kitten, nothing had changed. It still cried, still waited, still hoped for something no one could see. Then, on a rainy Tuesday, as thunder rumbled in the distance, a newcomer arrived at the shelter. An elderly woman, her silver hair neatly pinned back, leaned heavily on a cane as she made her way down the hallway. Her eyes, clouded with cataracts, still held a spark of determination. "I'm looking for my Jasper," she said, her voice quavering with emotion. "He was just a kitten when the fire took our home. I've been searching for months." The staff exchanged glances, their hearts heavy. How could they tell her that finding one specific kitten after so long was nearly impossible? How many orange kittens had passed through these doors, each with their own story of loss? But as they led her through the shelter, something extraordinary happened. The moment the woman's voice carried down the hallway, a change came over the orange kitten. Its ears perked up, eyes wide with a spark of recognition that hadn't been there before. And then silence. The cry that had become as familiar as breathing suddenly stopped. The shelter fell quiet, as if the whole world was holding its breath. Even the other animals seemed to sense that something momentous was about to occur. Maria, who had been watching from nearby, felt her heart begin to race. Could it be? "Jasper," the woman called out, hope and fear mingling in her voice. And there, in that moment, a miracle unfolded before their eyes. The kitten let out a different sound, a tiny, joyful mew that seemed to hold all the love in the world. It pressed itself against the cage door, paws reaching out, desperate for the touch it had been longing for all this time. Gone was the trembling, frightened creature they had known. In its place was a kitten transformed by joy, by recognition, by the reunion it had been waiting for all along. Tears streamed down the woman's face as she rushed forward, hands trembling as she opened the cage. The kitten leaped into her arms with a strength no one knew it possessed, burying its face in her neck, purring so loudly it seemed impossible from such a small creature. "Oh, my Jasper," she sobbed, cradling him close. "I never gave up hope. I knew I'd find you." Her fingers gently stroked his fur, feeling the bones that spoke of his ordeal, the tiny heart that beat in time with her own. "I'm so sorry it took so long. I'm here now. I'm here." The shelter staff stood in awe, witnessing a reunion that defied all odds. Maria found herself crying, overwhelmed by the beauty of the moment. Dr. Thompson removed his glasses, wiping away tears of his own. This was why they did this work, why they never gave up on any animal that came through their doors. As the initial shock wore off, questions began to form. How had this happened? How had Jasper ended up so far from home? The woman, whose name they learned was Margaret, began to share her story. "The fire took everything," she explained, her voice soft with remembered pain. "I was in the hospital for weeks. By the time I got out, Jasper was gone. The firefighters thought he must have run away, scared by the flames and the chaos. She had searched tirelessly, putting up posters, calling shelters, never losing faith that somewhere out there, her beloved kitten was waiting for her. I saw the video," she said, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I knew that cry. I'd heard it the night of the fire, just before everything went dark. That's how I found you." If this incredible story of hope and reunion has touched your heart, make sure to subscribe for more tales that showcase the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. As Margaret signed the adoption papers, her hands steady now with newfound purpose, Dr. Thompson shook his head in amazement. "In all my years," he said, "I've never seen anything like this. It's a reminder that love, true love, can bridge any distance, overcome any obstacle." Jasper, curled contentedly in Margaret's arms, gave one final glance around the shelter. His eyes, once dulled by sorrow, now shone with a light that touched everyone who saw it. It was as if he held a message for all the animals still waiting. Don't give up. Your person is out there, searching for you too. The story of Jasper and Margaret quickly spread, capturing hearts around the world. News crews descended on Oakwood, eager to share this tale of unwavering love and miraculous reunion. But for the shelter staff, the true miracle lay in the transformation they witnessed every day. Jasper, once so frail and sorrowful, blossomed under Margaret's care. His coat regained its luster, his eyes sparkled with joy, and his purr became a constant soundtrack to their days together. Margaret would bring him to visit the shelter, showing others what was possible when you held on to hope. The impact rippled outward, touching lives far beyond Oakwood. Shelters across the country reported an increase in adoptions, particularly of older animals or those with special needs. People were inspired to take a chance, to look beyond appearances and see the potential for love that existed in every furry face. Margaret became an advocate for animal welfare, sharing her story at schools and community events. "Every animal has a history," she would say, Jasper contentedly draped across her shoulders. "They all deserve a chance at a happy ending." The shelter itself was transformed. The story of Jasper brought in donations and volunteers, allowing them to upgrade their facilities and provide even better care for the animals. They instituted a new program, inspired by Jasper's journey, that used social media to help reunite lost pets with their families. As the months passed, Jasper's story became a source of hope for those facing their own struggles. People would write to Margaret, sharing how hearing about her reunion with Jasper had given them strength to keep going, to keep believing in the possibility of miracles. One letter, from a young girl battling cancer, touched Margaret deeply. "Jasper waited so long," the girl wrote, "but he never gave up. I won't give up either." Margaret and Jasper began visiting hospitals, bringing comfort and joy to those who needed it most. The bond between Jasper and Margaret only grew stronger with time. He seemed to sense when her arthritis was acting up, curling up on her sore joints with a soothing purr. She, in turn, would spend hours brushing his fur, murmuring words of love and reassurance. "I used to wonder why he cried for so long," Margaret confided to Maria during one of their visits to the shelter. "But now I think I understand. He wasn't just crying for himself. He was crying for me, for all the time we lost. He was keeping our connection alive." As Jasper's story continued to inspire, the shelter decided to honor his legacy in a permanent way. They created the Jasper Fund, dedicated to helping reunite lost pets with their families. It provided resources for microchipping, funded searches for missing animals, and offered support to those who had lost their furry companions. The night attendant who had first noticed Jasper's cries, now the shelter's director, often found herself pausing by the place where his cage had been. "You changed us all, little one," she would whisper. "You reminded us of why we do this work." Years passed, and Jasper grew from a tiny kitten into a handsome cat, his orange fur now streaked with distinguished gray. But his bond with Margaret remained as strong as ever. They were a familiar sight in Oakwood, the elderly woman and her faithful feline companion, a living testament to the power of love and perseverance. On warm evenings, Margaret would sit on her porch, Jasper curled in her lap, and watch the sun set. Sometimes, She would tell him about their time apart, about her search for him, her refusal to give up hope. And Jasper would look up at her with those knowing green eyes, as if to say, "I always knew you'd find me." Their story became legend, passed down through generations. Parents would tell their children about the kitten who cried for months, waiting for his person to come back to him. It became a metaphor for hope, for the unbreakable bonds of love, for the miracles that can happen when we refuse to give up. And in shelters across the country, whenever a particularly vocal animal arrived, the staff would share a knowing look. Maybe, they'd say, "This one's got a Margaret out there too." It was a reminder to treat every animal with compassion, to see the potential for a beautiful story in every cage. Jasper and Margaret's journey reminds us all that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't seen. It's heard in the beat of two hearts that refuse to be separated. It teaches us that love knows no boundaries, that hope can light the way through the darkest nights, and that even in our most desperate moments, we are never truly alone. As you go about your day, remember Jasper's unwavering faith and Margaret's tireless search. Let their story inspire you to hold on to hope, to listen for the quiet cries of those in need, and to believe in the possibility of miracles. For in every act of kindness, every moment of compassion, we create the potential for our own remarkable reunions. And who knows, perhaps somewhere out there, right now, another Jasper is waiting, another Margaret is searching, and another extraordinary tale of love and devotion is about to unfold. All it takes is an open heart, a willingness to listen, and the courage to never ever give up on those we love. In a world that can often seem dark and uncertain, let the story of Jasper and Margaret be a beacon of hope. Let it remind us that every animal, every person, has a story waiting to be heard. And in listening, in caring, in refusing to give up, we create a world where miracles don't just happen in stories. They become a part of our everyday lives. So the next time you pass an animal shelter or see a lost pet poster or hear a cry in the night, pause for a moment. Listen with your heart. You never know when you might be part of the next incredible journey, the next tale of unwavering love and miraculous reunion. Because in the end, it's these connections between humans and animals, between hope and reality, that make life truly beautiful. And as for Jasper and Margaret, they continue to inspire, to love, to remind us all of the extraordinary bonds that can form between species. Their story lives on, a testament to the power of love, the strength of the human-animal bond, and the miracles that can happen when we open our hearts to the possibility of connection. In the quiet moments, when the world is still, listen closely. You might just hear the echo of a kitten's cry, a sound that once broke hearts but now mends them. It's a reminder that no matter how lost we may feel, no matter how long the night, there is always hope. There is always love. And sometimes there are even miracles. And